everyone. Welcome to Module 2, Macromolecules, Lipids, and Carbohydrates. This is going to be a little bit different than what we did yesterday. I'm going to try to incorporate more check for understandings where I would like you to think to yourself or even speak out loud answers to some questions that I ask. And then as well, I'm going to incorporate the FRQ rubric a little bit more, as we'll see when we answer our FRQ questions, so you can see how FRQs are graded, so you're prepared when you take the test in May, likely, or June, hopefully not. So we're just going to get started. Again, this is the macromolecules. You did your do now, so you remember a little bit about the 4 groups of macromolecules. What are the 4 groups of macromolecules? If you said proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids, you are on the right track. Today, we're only focusing on lipids and carbohydrates. In Module 3, we will focus on nucleic acids and proteins. I grouped lipids and carbs together for one reason, because they're both used as a source of energy for the body, right? So macromolecules are made of monomers. They build up into polymers, and then those polymers can be broken back down into monomers, depending on what your body needs the molecules to do. So we're going to be focusing on lipids and carbs, even though they both do have some structural components like phospholipids, chitin, or cellulose. We are mostly going to focus on the energy aspect of lipids and carbs, since they are the macromolecules used for energy by the body, as we know from our other units. So today, similarly, our guided practice is going to go over some FRQ questions. If you at any time need extra help, I encourage you to check out this simple video to review the monomers and polymers, as well as if you want a more in-depth, like AP level, please watch this Bozeman Science video and answer the questions below that help you really understand what the macromolecules are. I feel like this is one of our weaker standards from the beginning of the year, so I think it's very important that we review this. Just getting started, what are the elements that make up all living things? So you don't want to say them out loud. If you said carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus, you are on the right track. Today, we are going to mostly be talking about carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but, hey, Ms. Ramos, but we are going to then move next week on to the other macromolecules. So thinking about this, our first FRQ question, also I wanted to point out, notice that here it says describe. Every FRQ question has a bolded word that you should be focusing on. So this one says describe. That means that you want to think about what, explain. It's kind of like explain, but it's more of thinking about characteristics, or thinking about what might be included in whatever it's asking you. So in this case, it's asking about carbon in biological systems. So you want to think carbon is an atom, but where is carbon seen in organisms? So I'll give you a second to think about where you have seen carbon before. So you want to think about where, we're talking about carbon, talking about atoms, so we should be triggering the ideas of macromolecules and things like that. If you haven't answered the question yet, please pause the video at this time, and I will go through the answer in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so describe the role of carbon in biological systems. So carbon is an atom, we know that, and it is actually used, right, as the atom to build macromolecules. So carbon is the atom used to build macromolecules. And then think about what are those 4 macromolecules again, like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. They all have carbon, Again, if you watch the Bozeman science video, you see that they all have carbon because carbon can bond 4 times, which makes it a really good molecule to create long chains of molecules. If you have any questions, again, make sure at this time you reach out to me or a classmate to get help. Looking at the AP rubric, let's say that was my answer that I submitted to the AP classroom. Let's see if I can make this bigger. You can see it's like 1, 0, or 1 point. So when you take your AP test, it'll look more like this. Not traditionally, this is an older question, that's why it says 6 points. The newer questions are out of 1 point, so it's like 0 or 1. And then usually like they have 4 components or 8 components to it, like we've done in class. So this one says the response indicates that carbon is used to build biological macromolecules. So I would get 100% or 1 point because I said it was used to build macromolecules, and then I gave an example. So that is how you read those rubrics. If you have any questions, again, please reach out. The next one is identify the process used to form the covalent peptide bonds that join monosaccharides into polysaccharides. Now this wasn't covered in our video for our Do Now, but it is covered in the Bozeman science video. We did talk about it way back when of how bonds are formed when we look at macromolecules. I'm going to draw a little example on the side to help review it. We know that monomers are consisted of individual parts. So we have our little circles. When we want to join those circles together, in order to do that, what we do is we release a water. So we release a water to connect a hydrogen and oxygen, and that helps us form a polymer. So they are now bonded together. So this is what is known as a dehydration synthesis, in that you are losing water, like getting dehydrated, and you are forming a polymer, which is an anabolic reaction, as you remove that water. So the individual parts are connected by removing a water, and that makes your polymer. The other one is hydrolysis, where you have a polymer and then in order to get to monomers, which are the individual parts, you need to add a water to break them apart. So that is what is known as hydrolysis. And the best part about hydrolysis is its name is literally what it means. Hydro, which is water, lysis, to cut. So we're cutting apart our polymer. So it is hydrolysis. So those are our 2 reactions to either build polymers or break down polymers. See if I can figure out how. Okay, technical difficulties, but we're figuring it out. Okay, so now we are going to continue on with answering the question. It says identify the process used to form the covalent peptide bonds. So covalent bonds are when electrons are shared that join monosaccharides into a polysaccharide. So again, mono, think monomer, into polymer. So what process identify? So this should be a short response. You should have 1 answer. Please do that now. You have if you need more time, pause the video. Otherwise, you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the process that is used is to join monosaccharides into a polysaccharide, as we discussed earlier, is a dehydration reaction or a condensation reaction. And you could, even though it's identify, so it's like a 1 word, I would recommend explaining what that is, because if you have the time, that could get you points. So dehydration reaction, which means water is released as 2 monomers are joined to form a polymer. Really shows that you understand. To see if we are correct, we're going to look at our rubric. and you see that it says 0 or 1. The response indicates the process that joins amino acids. So I cheated this question. It wasn't amino acid to polypeptide, and this time we're doing monosaccharide to polysaccharide, but they're all the same thing for every macromolecule group. A dehydration synthesis or a condensation reaction is what they brings two monomers into a polymer for whatever macromolecule group you are talking about. The next question says, identify membranes are essential components of all cells. Identify two macromolecules, not proteins, because we're not talking about those today, that are components of the plasma membrane in eukaryotic cell, and discuss the structure and function of each. So at this time you can pause the video and then you can answer the question. If you need a hint, you can stay on. Remember that the plasma membrane is made up of lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins. There are all three components. Lipids, phospholipids make up the membrane. Cholesterol makes up the membrane. Glycolipids and glycoproteins are, glyco means carbohydrates, so there are also carbohydrates that make up the membrane. So think about what their function might be. If you need to pause the video, please do so now. Otherwise, we're going to continue in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So this time we're going to look at the rubric for this question. So you should have said phospholipid is the macromolecule, and then the structure. So you want to mention something about its head and tail, likely, and then you want to think about what it does. So like selectively permeable, or like create structure around a cell, and then there's some other things you could have said as well. Again, this would be worth 3 points, 1 point for the macromolecule, and then 1 point, so it's only worth 2. 1 point for the macromolecule, and then 1 point for the function and structure. So you'd get a half point for each. You also should have talked about either cholesterol, the glycoprotein, again, 1 point for naming them, and then 1 point for the structure and function. So ours is not out of 6, it is out of 4, but gives you an idea of how you would want to grade it. So cholesterol, remember, is used to stabilize the membrane, and it is a steroid, so it has 4 rings. And glycolipids and glycoproteins are carbohydrates, and they're used in cell recognition. Okay, our final question is a multiple choice question. Which of the following best describes the structures of carbohydrates? So we have a couple of answers. We want to think of our process of elimination. We want to when we are doing these. So first, carbohydrates, I would recommend doing word associations. So yell out some like words that you can think of right now that have to do with carbohydrates. Some things you could have said were monomers, monosaccharide, polysaccharide, energy, like these are all things you should be thinking about when you think about carbohydrates. Like trigger all your knowledge about carbohydrates, and then let's attack the question. Okay, so they only occur as disaccharides, they occur as monomers, chains of monomers, and branch structures. They only occur as long branch structures. They occur as chains of monomers, the hydrogen bond, and complementary chains of monomers. I tend to not like questions that have only in them, because in science it's very rare that it's only once in this case, and only occurs disaccharides. Okay, we know that monosaccharides exist because that was part of my word association, so I can cross A out. They occur as monomers, chains of monomers, and branch structures. Okay, they do have monomers. A chain of monomers is known as a polymer, which is a word I said. I don't know about branch structures, but it's possible, so let's highlight it and come back. It could be correct. They only occur as long branch structures. Okay, number B is more correct because it has monomers in it, so C seems unlikely. They occur as chains of monomers, that hydrogen bonds with the complementary chains of monomers. This is confusing because I didn't say anything about hydrogen bonding in carbohydrates. That wasn't a word that was triggered. That's a word that shouldn't be triggered. So again, not the right answer. So when I look at this, the right answer is B. It is, and even though carbohydrates do consist of branch structures, and that's why they're so good at holding energy. So then moving on, just so you have independent practice today, you want to look through and answer the questions based on the images. You might remember this. We did attempt this earlier on, but we didn't really have enough time, and I don't think it really hit home what I was hoping it would. So I'm hoping to do it again, and this way you really understand like what is the function of proteins, fats, and carbs. If you are having trouble, please notice that there's a Quizlet here to help you. So please use that Quizlet to practice the vocabulary from today. I think that's very crucial. And then after you finish answering the questions, there is an answer key in the PowerPoint that's also linked for today's module. And finally, your mastery check is not on AP Classroom today, but instead is a CER, so like an FRQ response related to energy and carbohydrates and lipids. So please answer that there so I can grade it. Other than that, it was good learning with you today. Please log on during our block if you have any questions, and I look forward to hearing and seeing from you. Bye.